Computer. Hi, and welcome to the Gracie Gatto podcast. I'm Gracie Gatto. And today we have Rep. Ellen Reed. Thank you for stopping by. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, we have so many questions. So we're here to talk about HB 1675 and why it exists and why it needs to exist. So let's take it from the top and the conspiracy bill. Talk about it. Let's talk about it. Coffee talk.
Let's
Coffee
talk about it.
talk. Yeah, I want to hear about this one. So, what was the inception? What was the catalyst that led to HB 1675 happening in existence?
Okay, so for the uninitiated, we'll just lay the scene. In almost every state, including New Hampshire, there is an organization. The names are slightly different, but they're all basically the same. And that is the Coalition. In our states, the Coalition Against Domestic and Sexual Violence. And all of these states' coalitions are connected. Seems really great, right? Who would be against an organization against domestic and sexual violence? And certainly myself as a woman,
Hmm.
myself as a survivor of domestic violence when I was 18, as a survivor of sexual assault just from 3 years ago. And frankly, as a democratic socialist, I am 100% in favor of not just the current spending, but increasing spending to assist survivors. So the problem is what we've done with these coalitions, and this is true almost in all states, is that in our state, it's about 10 to $12 million of funding that would normally go to the state governments, and we'll just focus on the Department of Justice.
Hmm.
The Department of Justice Office of Victim Advocate. That funding that would go to that department to do a lot of these core jobs of the Department of Justice, which is things like helping victims navigate the court cases, collecting evidence from the victims in the form of rape kits, um, training law enforcement on how to deal with victims of assault, training SANE nurses, these are the nurses that collect the evidence, curating the sex offender registry. These are core government functions of the Department of Justice.
Hmm.
But what we've done is we've taken that public money and we've outsourced it to a private organization to do public jobs. That's what the coalition does, all those things that I just said.
Hmm.
But this private organ is basically, we contracted it out to a private entity, but that private entity has zero of the transparency that the government is forced to have, and zero of the accountability, zero of the requirements to due process, treatment of the law. They're operating as an NGO, and NGOs largely can do what they want.
Not, what
So,
is the NGO for the people who
oh,
don't know?
non government organization, a nonprofit, a
Okay.
private nonprofit, and you can have a private nonprofit for any reason that you would want to have one under the sun.
Hmm.
So the problem is we're outsourcing $12 million of public funds to do a public job to a private organization that has no accountability or transparency like the government would have if the
Hmm.
government were doing the job. And anytime you have that kind of public money, that level, without any oversight and without any transparency, you're going to have problems. And so I know detractors have called this a conspiracy theory
Hmm.
bill, but this is not even remotely the first state to have a problem with their coalition, and specifically issues around the federal funds and how the federal funds are being spent. So, was it a conspiracy theory just this year when the executive director of the Florida Coalition was convicted, and then the CFO of the Florida Coalition is currently in
Hmm.
trial with the sentence pending, for embezzling $7.5 million of these federal funds? Was it a conspiracy theory when something similar with federal funds happened to the California Coalition,
Hmm.
around $1 million in California, and they got in trouble? Was it conspiracy theory when it happened to Tennessee Coalition, to the Oklahoma Coalition, which had to be completely restructured? It's a problem, and it's a problem of money and power operating in the dark. And usually with government contractors, we force transparency on government contractors to the same level that we would put transparency on the government.
Hmm.
Because if you're going to contract out your work to a private entity, then you need to be held to that same standard as the government would be. But unfortunately, that's not happening with these coalitions. And what it means is that money that should be helping victims, that should be helping the 12,000 people in New Hampshire who call the coalition for help.
I was one of those people. They didn't help me.
And me too.
Yeah.
And it turns out of that 12,000 people who call the coalition for help in New Hampshire, they really only help in terms of rape kids or shelter about 300-ish a
Yeah.
year.
So where's the
300
money? Where's
to
the money going, right? Where's the money going?
so we have I don't want to say I have answers because this bill, HB 1675, is not saying, oh, you've done all these things, we know it. It's saying we have a lot of problematic data here.
Hmm.
So there needs to be an investigation. So the bill itself just establishes a study commission, a legislative study commission, who is charged with investigating 10 different points. It also temporarily, pending the results of that study commission, limits their federal funding levels to only what materially benefits survivors. This is where they're starting to say, "Oh, you're going to decrease funding for survivors." No,
That's not true.
any
Yeah, I seen the bill.
anything that
Yeah.
helps survivors is protected in the bill. However, I did put it in an amendment, which even takes that piece out. So we wouldn't be touching, even though we have a lot of problematic evidence, which we can get into, we wouldn't be touching the funding level at all.
Get it?
So,
Actually, piggybacking on that idea, I just talked to someone today, and they said that there is what was it, a nonprofit that have to do with autism, and they want to get rid of this group, this nonprofit for autism, because nobody's ever seen anything done with autism. But it sounds terrible because I have a son who's autistic nonverbal. So you would think that I would support something like this, and I'm actually voting against this council that is doing the same thing. There's no accountability at all.
so if it's just an NGO and they're just funded by private donations, that's really kind of it may be sad that they're not doing what they are setting out to do. And it's the kind of thing you might want to
So
make publicly known. But it's a big, big problem when that NGO is then funded by federal and state
taxpayers,
taxpayer dollars,
taxpayers.
especially when it's a core function of the government that we're outsourcing
And
to.
what's even more twisted is the fact that they use the domestic violence. They use like people who are vulnerable to possibly or allegedly some federal funding.
Right.
Hmm.
Again,
It's questionable.
the bill is just open the books. The bill is just sunlight.
Open the books. Yeah.
That's all it is.
And
It's
it's
with the amendment, it's just the investigation, it's the study commission, it's a yearly audit, which should be happening anyway. And it's a 91A access. That's our right to know law.
mhm.
Uh, all as far as I know, and I've looked into it, all of the other, or at least the vast majority of the other private nonprofits that we do send state and federal funds to are 91A right to know accessible. So, for example, the New Hampshire Housing Finance Authority gets about 300 million in federal dollars, 5 million of state dollars. If you put in a 91A right to know request with them, they respond. All of their meetings are held according to 91A, so everything is out in the public and accessible to the public. The coalition doesn't operate like that. We have no idea how much people are getting paid. We don't know where they're putting money. We don't know how they determine which victims to help.
Mhm.
They clearly have, and we can get into the details, have given preferential treatment to some victims and not to other
Mm.
victims. And it's problematic. So this
Mhm.
is just open the books. Let's see everything and see if there is reason to take a further step. But if you want to get into the how I got into this, or if you want to get into like the actual pieces in the bill that are meant to be investigated and the evidence we have as to why that's in the bill, I'm happy to do it.
All right, let's get to let's take it from the top. Okay. So let's talk about one of the backers of well, let's get into the Marcy's Law bit. That was pretty
Oh,
juicy.
okay.
Okay, so this is where I got kind of pulled in because I'm like, what? Because
So this is only this this is only something I've learned in the last like year or so, but I lived through the Marcy's Law thing without realizing what was going on behind the scenes. Please
Right.
ignore the weird whistles. That's my parrot.
It's
Um,
okay.
so my first term was the 2017-2018 term. And in 2018, a bill came in called Marcy's Law. It was actually a New Hampshire constitutional amendment proposal.
Hmm.
The idea is that it would give constitutional rights to victims, which sounds great. But it turns out when you look at it, it's really problematic because it attacks the the Bill of Rights, the federal Bill of Rights for rights of the accused. It actually undermines due process.
Hmm.
And we can talk about that in a second, but let me talk about how Marcy's Law got started.
Hmm.
So there is a California billionaire by the name of Henry T. Nicholas III.
Speaking of troubling Californians, but yeah.
It's a yeah. I think it's ironic that one of the things that the coalition people have been saying is that this is a conspiracy theorist and you just put this bill in because of this lady in California told you to. No one who knows me would ever accuse me of doing anything because I was told to do it.
Same
Um,
here. Same here.
so, but the lady in question is just someone who's been researching them for a few years and has brought up questions and 91A requests.
Hmm.
And she lives part time in New Hampshire and part time in California.
Yeah,
But the irony is,
we're talking about Claire Best,
we're
everybody.
talking about Claire Best. She's just one of a very large team of people who've been helping me
A
research.
very large
Um,
team. Yes.
yeah, I would say about a dozen
Hmm.
people who've been helping me research, and she's one of them, and she's been at it the longest. So sweet little British lady.
She's so small. She's so small.
But let's get back to the real Californian that is problematic, and that is this billionaire. Henry T. Nicholas III is a billionaire from California.
Very
Now in
highbrow name.
19 what?
Very highbrow name.
Indeed. In 1985, his sister was tragically murdered. Years and years later, he got in trouble with the law, and part of the arrangement for his troubles was that he had to give money to a nonprofit. So he started Marcy's Law. Marcy's Law, and named after his sister. And it's this idea that he was going to spend money getting this constitutional amendment pushed in, if not every state, then a lot of states. I don't know about the whole list, but a whole bunch of states. He had people, legislators, submit this legislation, and he had the various people related to those states lobby for this legislation. So this happened in New Hampshire in 2018. I was a newbie, but even then, it was wild because it was the most heavily lobbied, and still is to this day after
Mhm.
10 years in office, the most heavily lobbied bill I've ever seen by far. And we're talking about abortion bills, gun bills, labor union bills. This blew them all away with the amount of money that was coming in and how much people were pushing this. So it was this problematic thing that looked like it was attacking victims' rights. And they came under scrutiny because, as it turned out, as of 2018, a lot of things were known about Henry T. Nicholas. So first of all, he was intending on spending $1 million. He ended up spending about $500,000 in New Hampshire.
Mm.
A lot of that money he gave to, not to the coalition, but to individuals who are employed by the coalition, lobbyists. We'll get to that in a second.
Mhm.
But here's what's really troubling. He was in trouble for securities fraud. He was in trouble for battering his partner, a domestic violence offender, sending money to the coalition. He is a 5-time, and at that time was a 5-time felony drug trafficking convict,
Mhm.
convicted of 5
And
counts.
this isn't a conspiracy theory. We actually have the Vanity
No,
Fair
yeah,
that we have the Vanity Fair article we can pin to this chat right now.
not just the Vanity Fair. There's
There's a
so many
lot.
articles on him. He's
Just
quite the character.
Google
Right.
him.
There's ABC News, there's WMUR, there's NHPR, there,
Everything.
you name it. And there's at least, I would say, 8 or 9 articles that I've seen from very well respected sources. So we can attach all those. He also was in a 2007 ABC News article entitled Billionaires in the Bedroom. And this ABC News article, and again, remember 2007,
Yeah.
it's before we knew what an Epstein was, okay?
Yes.
In 2007, ABC News did this article, Billionaires in the Bedroom, that was exposing the sexual proclivities of 2 billionaires. One was this Henry T. Nicholas guy who was kind of proud of his $30 million underground sex and drug lair. That's his words.
Hmm.
Under his equestrian estate, I think in Nevada, where prostitution's legal. And he talked about all the prostitutes and the drugs that they did, and, was very flippant about it. The other billionaire in that same 2007 ABC News article was this New York financier with an island called Little St. James, Jeffrey, somebody.
Ooh.
So,
This is why they're trying to kill the bill so bad, you guys.
so
This is why. But
I
go on.
can't speak to their motivation. There's the obvious, which is if an investigation and an audit and right to know was, if they had nothing to hide, why are they fighting this so hard? Why are they calling all the, by the way, women and
Conspiracy
victims who are part of pushing this
survivors.
exposure?
Hmm.
Why are they calling us crazy and emotional and hysterical? And
They're
why
the
are they
ones,
going to that old misogynistic tactic of trying to discredit us
right?
if they
Okay.
have nothing to hide?
Yeah, like what is this shit
I'm not
about?
done with I'm
Oh,
not
good.
done with Henry T. Nicholas.
Okay, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Henry T. Nicholas. So in 2018, all of this was known. The securities fraud, the
Mm.
battery, the 5-time drug trafficking convict, the $30 million sex layer. All of this was known in 2018.
Underground
And
caves. Yeah.
the coalition was questioned as to why they were accepting money and working with this guy. And they said they were very proud to work with him. Well, my little team of investigators, if you will, we were having dinner about this bill just a few weeks ago, and we were bringing up the billionaires in the bedroom article, and someone says, "Is he in the Epstein files?" And so right there at dinner, and this is just a few weeks ago,
Yeah, yeah, I
the
remember that.
person looks up 430 hits. So he is an official Jeffrey Epstein affiliated billionaire, convict billionaire.
He
Now,
wait,
what?
430 times he was mentioned in the Epstein files.
Correct.
So he's under Henry Nicholas. So you can go into the Epstein files at the DOJ's website / Epstein and type in Henry Nicholas and you'll see the 430 mentions of
Hits. Yeah.
hits. Yeah, okay.
I did not, because I was preparing for this bill and I have a million things going on. I didn't get into the files to see what they were. It may just be financing. I don't know, but looks weird.
Yeah, well, Epstein does have a type.
Billionaires with sex layers. So
Yes. Yes.
with drug and sex issues.
Mm.
So anyway, so what he did, and I think maybe now might be the right time to discuss the finances of the coalition and the laws that restrict them. So they are, depending on the year, 98 to 99.9% funded by federal, mostly federal, and also some state funds. This is according to their 990s. IRS 990 is the tax return for like a
And
501c3.
we
Like,
could post those, by the way, so
yeah,
you could see those.
I highly encourage the
Hmm.
posting of multiple years 990s. So there's two issues that limit how much they can lobby on a bill. One is all of those state and federal funds, the
Hmm.
98% of their money, it's illegal to use those funds to lobby, full stop. You can't lobby on the state level. You can't lobby on the federal level. And then for anyone who doesn't know, lobbying is any time a person who is paid by an organization talks to a legislator in support or against a piece of active legislation. So with Marcy's Law, this was an active piece of legislation. Every single email, text, Zoom call,
Hmm.
hallway conversation, them speaking in committee officially, them asking the public to write in is also considered lobbying. Every single action regarding that is considered lobbying, and none of that state and federal funds, at least 98% of their funds, can be used to do that. So on average, they get about, on their 990s, $200,000 ish of private donations. And it's these private donations that they're allowed to lobby with, but they can't use all 200,000 because they're also a 501c3. And while there's a few laws impacting how much a 501c3 can lobby, Generally speaking, most lawyers and accountants will tell you you have to stay under 5% of those legal funds.
Okay,
So
so
it
you can't just spend $220,000 on XYZ. They're
no,
capped. They're capped.
and it's only those private donations that are
Okay.
counted, right?
Okay.
So every year they claim apparently exactly 5%, exactly of whatever their private donations were. They claim exactly 5% in lobbying. So that turns out to be, depending on the year, around $11,000 to $13,000. They cannot legally exceed $11,000 to $13,000 a year in lobbying.
Mm-hmm.
Just for reference, the average lobbyist in New Hampshire gets around $80,000 a year. They have seven, well, I think they have five now, but like just a couple years ago, they had up to seven registered lobbyists.
Mm-hmm.
One, at least one, we don't know all, because again, it's a completely opaque closed book system. We don't have details. One of them is a dedicated lobbyist. It's her only job there. The others are the executive director. So she has other duties, but she also lobbies. The public affairs director has other duties, but also lobbies. So whatever percentage of their salary, which we don't know exactly what they're making, but some percentage is going to lobbying.
Mm-hmm.
By their own website, they lobby on 150 bills a year. Please tell me how an organization, when an average lobbyist makes 80 grand, how an organization can have 5 to 7 lobbyists, at least one, if not more, dedicated full-time lobbyists lobbying on 150 bills a year for $11,000.
So the executive director or the executive director and the communications director of
The
the
public affairs director, and there are
public
a few
affairs.
others that are registered, yes.
So they're all registered lobbyists.
A lot of them are, yes. Now, the whole coalition, and this is an important thing to set aside. The coalition itself is structured with 12, it used to be 13 membership organizations. These are your local, what you would call shelters. So if you're on the seacoast, it's Haven. If you're out towards Hanover, it's Wise. Bridges in the Central Corridor.
Yeah.
So when you talk about oh, I was a victim or my friend was a victim, and then they went to a shelter, or they called a hotline, or they got assistance. They were going to one of these member organizations, but they all fall under the coalition and they all are paid by the coalition. But for our purposes, we are worried about the people in the central organizing piece, not the people in the shelters. We think that most of them do really fantastic work and are desperately needed. But this kind of central, the coalition with the
Right.
executive director and like the head of the octopus, if you will, this is what is problematic. And so all these central people, going back to Marcy's Law now,
Mm-hmm.
with all of the information about lobbying. Now, these central people who are registered lobbyists all received independently between $30,000 and $50,000 from Henry T. Nicholas to lobby on Marcy's Law. We know this for a fact because Henry T. Nicholas submitted his proper paperwork. It is federal documentation. He says he paid the person who's the public affairs director, for example, $48,000 to lobby for Marcy's Law. Only one law, not the 150, just the one. She got
The guy with the
40,000.
guy with the orgy lair is actually good with numbers.
He's a billionaire.
Who knew?
But, and I mean, he was doing the charity thing ostensibly because he wanted to get out of trouble, but so he had to be all above board. But I digress. The problems here, so there's a couple problems
I'm
with
sorry,
the
I'm
fact
laughing because it's so bad. Oh God.
well, we're not even into the bad part yet. I'm just setting up the structure.
We're just warming up. Okay.
Right. I mean, Henry T. Nicholas is a questionable character, but at this point, all we have is that he paid some people who were registered lobbyists that worked for the coalition some money to lobby for a bill. Two things are problematic here, other than, well, I'll just say it. So the first thing is that why did he not give the money to the coalition directly? Remember that they have that limitation on how much they can spend, what percentage of those private donations they can spend, only 5%. If they're
Right.
only getting $200,000 and then they get another $400,000 on top of that, all to lobby, they're now at 2/3 of their income in lobbying. So they couldn't receive that money directly. So instead, he paid each of the registered lobbyists of the coalition independently to lobby for him. However, they used their coalition titles, coalition
Mm.
emails, all of the auspices of
Mhm.
the coalition to lobby. So effectively, it was the coalition lobbying. And this is all documented in various emails, various documentation where they used their titles and their email addresses. And it kind of goes even deeper when you get into city property
The
and
coalition is it's kind of a spooky organization considering that they have flying monkeys that come and attack you on social media. I've gotten to that. I know you've gotten that. Calling it they've called this a personal vendetta. They called this, I mean, every name under the sun, but that's not what this is. We don't know these people personally. We don't, we wish them the best. We want their kids to be happy and healthy, okay? That's
I
not the issue. The issue is the money.
the issue is the money. Now, all of us, all the 12 people that I'm working with came to this conclusion that the coalition was problematic because of usually their own personal stories, being a victim that wasn't helped and looking deeper into how that went, how that ended up playing out. But yeah, look, I think occupations are self-selecting and personality types go to certain occupations. If you for example like people, you might be a nurse,
Hmm.
right? That looks good. If you like kids, you might be a teacher. And if you are a clinically diagnosable narcissist, politics is your jam. I am surrounded by narcissists in my work. And one thing that any therapist will tell you about narcissists is they have flying monkeys, right?
Hmm.
They have people who because they themselves are desperate for the validation of the narcissist,
Love
will
me,
do
love me,
whatever
love
the
me.
narcissist says.
Yeah.
So, like, yeah, I'm no stranger to attacks. People who know me, even my worst enemies, would not say that I am not principled or not honest. So I'm known for standing up for things that I think are right, even if people would disagree with me, and even if it's unpopular. So I'm used to getting attacked. Whatever,
Same here.
that's fine. Um, can I say one other thing about Marcy's Law and Henry T?
Absolutely.
The other problem, though, so it looks like he essentially paid the coalition, which would have violated their 501c3 status and would have counted as tax fraud by paying them individually, but they were still lobbying as the coalition, and the coalition officially was in support of Marcy's Law.
Hmm.
However, the individual lobbyist, the public affairs director, and I'm pretty sure the executive director and maybe others, but at least those two, and especially the public affairs director, they all registered lobbyists have to report in a year because you're registered with the state. Who's paid me to lobby on what? Not the bill specifically, but for what organization? It does not appear that the public affairs director or others have reported the $48,000 they received from Henry T. Nicholas, which again, we know for a fact because he did the reporting on the federal level for who he paid. So that's one problem. Looks like tax fraud. If they can point to where it was reported or why the numbers actually do add up, they haven't. That was a 4-hour hearing. They had ample opportunity and they did not say
That's the
anything except
that's
for
the
we're a
thing.
bunch of crazy women.
That's the thing, though. We will fuck right off if they just open their books.
Right.
We will say, and if there's nothing there, I will be the first to apologize if I was wrong.
Right.
Right?
I have never said for sure, I know 100% that they are guilty of tax fraud and fraud of federal funds. It's just a lot of there. And that's just, Gracie, that's just one piece. There's 10
I
pieces to
know.
this bill. There's 10 pieces to this bill.
Let's get into it.
Uh, would you like another piece of missing money?
Yes, let's talk about missing money.
Let's talk about some missing money and potentially ill-gotten gain.
Yes.
So one of the MOs that seems to be happening when we study the cases, the assault cases that the coalition gets involved in,
Mm.
is that they may not care too much about the 12,000 people who call and they only really materially help 300 to 500. but they love them some victims who are from some high dollar institutions. The
Mm-hmm.
Dartmouth case, the St. Paul's case, the Phillips Exeter case. And in those cases, they bring the TV cameras. As a side note, it is a well-known thing that the public affairs director is married to the political director of the largest TV station in the state.
WMUR.
WMUR. The public affairs director of the coalition is married to the political director of WMUR that covers all of our state politics. And there have been more than one favorable WMUR article and coverage of the coalition. So, but I digress. So let's just take the Dartmouth case. It looks like when we have a victim at a high dollar institution, criminal cases cost them money because they have to send out advocates.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe if your assaulter is poor and doesn't come from a high dollar institution, maybe they don't want to spend that much, resources behind your case.
Mm-hmm.
But what comes after a criminal case? The civil case.
Mm-hmm.
And if you are from a high dollar institution, your assaulter is from a high dollar institution, they really do like that. So what happened with the Dartmouth case? A victim comes to them, they give them a pro bono attorney. The pro bono attorney is supposed to be representing the victim for free. And again, the coalition is acting like a government agency, right? So they should be, they're doing this work regardless of what money they might be able to make, right? So you just give them the pro bono attorney. But in the Dartmouth case, for example, the settlement was about $14 million for the victim, except there were awards specifically, we think about $3 million, and I'll talk about the we think, about $3 million given to the coalition. Of that $3 million, 250,000-ish was awarded to Wise, which is the shelter out in that region. And Dartmouth, great, that's fine. But this other like 2-point-something million, which we know there's a reference in the court documents to this award, we cannot find any report that they have received this money. They did not declare it in any of the 990s. Remember, they only saying they get $200,000. That's not state and federal funds. We can't find this money, but oddly, and I'm not saying this is the same money, but in the same year, a few months after the award was judged, the public affairs director and the political director of the news station paid off the last $300,000 on their home, and the executive director bought 3 houses, not 1, not 2, but 3 houses within months of that settlement.
Okay, so for those of us who are suffering for trying to figure out how to make a living and pay our mortgage,
or rent.
Or rent, yes. It's maddening.
So again, do I know that it's inappropriate that they receive a portion of the settlement? I'm not an investigator. I'm not a detective. I'm not an accountant. I'm not a lawyer. I don't know. It looks weird to me, but it looks super weird when this money seems to go missing and then they start buying houses. It's the kind of thing an IRS auditor might want to investigate.
And that's what this bill is supposed to do. Open the book.
I'm saying, open the book. Let's see it. Let's have it out.
I'm hearing a bunch of stuff saying that, that anybody who supports this bill is, against women of domestic violence. And it's like, hello, who?
I am a victim. And I can talk about how I came to this issue, and it was through my own assault. Because before my assault in 2022, I was a wide-eyed Democrat like the ones that are criticizing me right now. I thought the coalition are the good guys. They're the experts. Reminding you that in every state, but certainly in New Hampshire, there is not a single advocate, a hotline, a prosecutor, a sexual assault nurse, anyone you can go to if you're assaulted who is not part of the coalition. They have a full monopoly on all assistance. There is no local organization. Everyone is wrapped up into the coalition. So if, for example, you may be friends with the public affairs director, maybe you had beef with the public affairs director, you might not get help.
That's what happened.
And there's no law requiring that they help you, unlike the government.
I had when I had my domestic violence issue, I had a phone call with the communications director of the Coalition Against Domestic Violence. I'm just going to name her Amanda Grady Sexton. I sent a tweet out for help, and her husband, Adam Sexton, called me. And he said, I will have you talk to my wife. This is her wheelhouse. So she called me and we had a conversation. And I had fled domestic violence, uh, my ex-husband. I fled and went back to LA. So they're making me come back with a court order saying if I stay out there longer, it would be kidnapping. I had to come back. So I could not find an attorney after that what the exchange that happened with me and Amanda Grady Sexton. So when I called her, well, she called me and I told her my story, and then she called me back later, and then she gave me an ultimatum, and she said, because she knew I was working on the 10-part docuseries. She knew I was working with Claire Best, and she had told me to my face or on the phone. She said, I need to give up Claire or she won't help me. And yeah, and I said, well, fuck off. Click. After that, I couldn't even get a divorce attorney. Conflict of interest, click, 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 click.
Right.
And it's
They
been,
work with a lot of lawyers in the
I
state.
know, I know.
And as we all know, the very first thing that happens when you call a lawyer is they run a conflict of interest check before you say anything else other than the people involved.
I actually got fed up with the last call. I think it was like lawyer number 7. And he told me, I'm like, does this have anything to do with Amanda Grady Sexton? And he hung up on me. Yeah.
And this is why the Democrats who are attacking me, or
And
the
attacking
Democrats,
me.
or right, or the ones that have privately connected with you and the ones that privately connected with me, because I
Yeah.
know I've had at least a dozen at this point of victims or people who have worked even in high up positions with the
Mhm.
coalition
Mhm.
previously, or I've been contacted by police officers and chiefs of police. I've been contacted by lawyers who used to work at the DOJ. I can't say their names because they are afraid of retaliation from the coalition
Oh, and they do
because they're so
retaliate.
connected.
They do retaliate. I actually had a phone call, a back channel for a job that told me that they didn't want to hire me. And I said, why not? And they just said that I'm a lefty or something like that. And I'm too much trouble. And it's
You
like,
too?
yeah. And I'm like, wait a minute. It's like, I don't go around, like, when I do a job, I'm not going around saying, hey, I won't work for you if you're a MAGA. I won't work for you if you're a Democrat. That's bullshit. And that was sort of the gist of what I got as feedback from the back channel. So they are connected, and I can't prove it, but you get a sneaking suspicion that there's something up, when
Eh,
things keep
So again,
happening to you.
I obviously can't speak
Yeah.
for specific lawyers and who, but the thing is this is a consistent pattern where you get the ick. Like it
Mhm.
feels a little bit like being in like a Godfather movie or something where
Right?
it's kind of incestuous how, and we're a small state, so there's a lot of people who know each other,
Everybody knows everybody. I
but
know.
the levers of power here seem to kind of connect in ways that, again, it gives me the ick that it's the same people calling
And
all these
this
shots.
and the same people who are actually opposing the bill that are shocking the hell out of me. Like David Muse, he was one that I actually respected at one time. And now he's calling me out. Like, I told him on Facebook, it's like, you know what? Like he's so like verbose about his views, but as long as his comments are turned off.
But has David looked at the 990s and the 15A lobbying reports?
Oh wait,
Has David looked at the Cypress Award out of Dartmouth and then the ensuing the 990 for the year in
that's
the
what he would
following year
do.
that doesn't report the Cypress Award and then the ensuing house purchases?
That's what he would do. He just
Like,
yell.
has he looked at this, or is he just, kind of picking his team as politics does,
He
right?
picked his team because he said on his public Facebook feed that he read the bill and it was god awful. And I'm like, wait a minute, I read the bill, and what did you read? Because I didn't get that, and I'm a
He has not
survivor.
reached out to me personally. And as
He
far
won't.
as I can tell from what he says, it sounds like he didn't even bother to look at the hearing to
Yes,
see the information. He certainly doesn't have the 150 pages of documentation we provided. I
and
would
we'll be happy to
encourage
provide.
Representative Muse, if he ever sees this, to contact me and talk to me. And if he is too uncomfortable doing that, then certainly get the bill file and go over the documentation that shows that there's a there there. That's what I'll say. There's a there there.
And there's
Um,
also people who call themselves feminists who don't read the bill, but will have a bunch of words and write op-eds about it.
right. So
Hmm.
again, I think, whether it's Muse, whether it's, someone else, the problem with politics, as we all know, and it's gotten very, very bad, is I won't say polarized because that's not the right word, because that means we're getting more extreme. And I'm very much extreme. I'm as far left as they come on almost every issue.
Yeah.
I don't think what we need is more moderation and being in the middle. I think what we need is more good faith engagement, because the problem isn't that we've become polarized on policy. The problem is that we are blind to good faith engagement. We have picked our sides, and
Hmm.
anything that the other side says is bad, we're not going to listen. And anything that our side says is good, we're going to trust blindly.
Hmm.
And the thing is, as Democrats, and this is so important, as Democrats, how dare we expect Republicans to look in their own closet, to be willing to call out their own people when their people are in the Epstein files, when their people are embezzling funds, when their people are in trouble,
Hmm.
and we are not willing to look at our own people? It's
Hmm.
hypocrisy.
It
It
is.
is because I care about victims. It's because I am a victim. It's because I care about government funds being spent, because I'm a socialist, that I am demanding transparency so that we can appropriately fund victim services and not perhaps buy houses for a couple of people. So I would encourage anyone who could, like me in 2022, before my own assault, wide-eyed Democrat that just believes that the coalition are the good guys, because of course it's in the name, they're against
Yeah.
domestic and sexual violence.
Yeah.
If you're wide-eyed and Democrat and you just believe in funding like I do, you believe in helping victims like I do, just look at the data. That's all.
And
That's
we're
all I
not and we're
say.
not calling for disabling the
No.
coalition. We're not trying to bring them down. We're not doing any of that. I've read so much crap that I'm just like rolling my eyes. But let's make it clear, we're not trying to bring down the coalition.
And I will not tolerate one word of anything I have ever said or ever will say, or any word of this bill being used to justify reducing funding for any victim services,
Right.
period, full stop. I will be the first one to fight that, and the first one to say, that's not what I said, or that's not what I wanted. What I want is, I mean, the Republicans will continue to attack us over, government spending if we're not willing to make sure that the expenditures are fair and transparent and accurate,
Hmm.
right? If you keep, like in Florida, like in California, Oklahoma, Tennessee, and these other states, if we keep allowing fraud and abuse on these funds, then the Republicans aren't wrong in saying, hey, we got to look at government spending.
Yeah. And if there's some hanky-panky going on, we want to know about it. And
We
it
would
just,
be mad,
yeah, we
right?
will we would
It
be
was a
mad.
Republican organization that was taking millions of dollars meant for victims. We would be mad if they weren't filing their reports correctly. We would be mad. So why can't we just be honest about how we go about things? Why does it have to be about the teams?
And the private affairs, the communications director, Amanda Grady Sexton, she had police escorts for the hearing. Let's talk about that because I just think that it's nobody's trying to kill you, Amanda.
So right. I mean, as far as I know, but I may not be privy to it, but I don't know of any death threats or threats of assault or anything that she's received. My understanding of her justification of having private security, and let me just say, be really clear. This was when she turned up along with quite a few other lobbyists for
Mhm.
the coalition. I believe that there were at least 5 in the room with the orange badge that they're required to wear. There were a bunch of other coalition employees who were also lobbying, who were not wearing orange badges and are not registered. That's also illegal. But she turned up to lobby on a series of bills in criminal justice, and she had, by our count, and I believe, according to what I've heard from our security at the State House, 3 off-duty Concord police officers that were being paid to protect her while she lobbies. And the idea was that she's received a lot of harassment and threats. I can tell you, I haven't spoken to her since one conversation back in 2022, where she told me on a Zoom that when I went about my particular assault and it said we need to fix the law for victims, and she said, we wrote the system the way it is. It's working perfectly. And that's the last I've had any interaction with her. So that's not coming from me.
Right.
Um, I don't know what she's claiming is the harassment, but it's not anyone that I know of. And she
I would
hasn't made
love
any
to
of
see,
those.
but you know what? I would actually like go to her aid if she was actually getting harassed, but I don't believe it.
Right. Of course, no one should be have like death threats or harassment
Right.
or anything. But just to be clear, so remember that $11,000 they're not allowed to exceed, or else they'll have their tax exempt status revoked, and then they'll have to owe 20 years of back taxes
Right.
and might be charged with tax evasion. So $11,000, when you pay private security for to protect you while you're lobbying, that falls under lobbying expenditures. Printing at
Mhm.
Staples for lobbying falls under lobbying expenditures. Mileage, if you're getting paid mileage to travel to lobby, is falls under lobbying expenditures. So any of those costs fall under that $11,000. And we did calculate with all of their orange badges in the room, the registered lobbyists, even disregarding the people who were not registered lobbyists who were lobbying anyway for some reason, with the private security over I think it was like a 10-hour day or something insane. Like they basically blew over half of the $11,000 budget in one day. And they're there. Their
It,
dedicated lobbyist is there pretty much every single day. We have committee hearings. So if there is a criminal justice committee hearing, judiciary committee hearing, health and human services committee hearing, she's there. She's there constantly. And that's just visually on committee days. That's not including the emails, the texts, the phone calls, the Zooms. That's not including any of the other correspondence. By the way, going back to those lobbying, in the same year that they claim, and they claim about 11 to 13,000 every year in lobbying,
Mhm.
year after year, the amounts that the individual lobbyists being paid by them claim they're being paid don't line up. So in one year where the coalition says, oh, we only spent $11,000 in lobbying because we can't spend any more, so of course we didn't. But then their dedicated lobbyists reported that she received 34,000 from them.
yeah, and wasn't there a slush fund that we found?
I don't know. I don't know about the
Okay, we'll
slush
we
fund,
won't get
but
into
this
that.
is why I'm
Yeah.
not. I'm just an impassioned, yes, educated, yes, veteran legislator, but ultimately I'm just a legislator. I'm not an investigator. I'm not an IRS auditor. I'm asking that we investigate them and study whether or not there was anything wrong and just get some sunlight.
Mhm.
And by the way, they're like, well, you're trying to criminally prosecute. No, it's just an investigation. Congress does this all the time. Currently, Congress has congressional investigations on big tech companies and social media companies,
Mhm.
AI companies, to make sure that, are they breaking the law? Are they doing things that are untoward? This is a long-standing thing. We had Jan 6 congressional investigations. We've also done legislation on very specific entities in this state,
We're just
and it's
asking for
completely
a
fair. The
an
FRM Ponzi scheme that happened in New Hampshire.
oh,
We
let's
had
talk about the
legislation on
Ponzi
that.
scheme. We didn't talk about any of that yet. We're still on Marcy's Law and
Right. Well,
lobbying.
I mean, I went
It's
from
so
Marcy's Law
big.
to like the kind of, it looks like maybe a kickback scheme with the lawyers and the high dollar institutions.
It's
And I talked about the lobbying. But the point is that the documents, the numbers just don't add up. And anyone, including David Muse, including anyone who's like a classic dyed-in-the-wool, true blue Democrat who, of course, supports victims' assistance. They just need to look in the numbers and see these tax documents don't add up.
Yeah, there's
Somebody
also
should look into this.
there's a pod or was it a radio personality around here, Arnie Arneson, and they have a lot of things to say about this bill, and not all of it good.
No, and I've always respected Arnie as
Yeah,
well, and I've had respect for Representative Muse.
yeah, I've had,
He's
yeah.
well, and I mean, I we've had our moments of disagreements,
Mhm.
especially over women's rights, but he fought me on equal protection under the law for women when it comes to exposure of chest, which I think that there should be no difference under the law. And if we had passed the Equal Protection Act, then the Equal Rights Act, then we wouldn't have our current state in this state. But he disagreed with me, so we've
Mhm.
had disagreements over the past. We've also had wonderful areas where he's fought for my bills.
Yeah,
So I have respect for these people, but I just really feel like the knee jerk reaction in politics right now is to pick our side.
yeah.
And obviously, our side is the coalition against domestic and sexual violence. They're helping women, they're helping victims.
Now it's
And
interesting because the research team that we have looking into this, we're all sort of just different people. Like we're not all Dems, we're not all Republicans, we're not
right.
all. It's just we all hit the same uh from our research and own individual digging, the same the gas leak. It's like, do you smell that? Let's
Yeah.
continue. Let's continue.
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
what we found. Yes.
Exactly. We have typically no reason to like even necessarily like each other. And there's some people in there who have abhorrent views in other venues
Yeah,
that
I
I
know.
absolutely don't agree with.
It's like, no, I don't know. Don't unsubscribe. Unsubscribe. But
Unsubscribe, exactly. But
exactly.
we did all kind of smell the gas leak at the same time.
Yes, we did.
Came at it from different angles, but it's right there. So David Muse, Arnie Arneson, who I've always respected, just look at the numbers. Just look at the tax doc. If nothing else, just look at the tax
And we'll
documents.
be happy to link all of that stuff onto this so they can see it for themselves that we are not crazy. We're not
Tag
a
them.
bunch of hysterical women who just want to get at Amanda just because. That's not what this
I've
is.
had one interaction with her my entire life. And
I
it's
just
when she told me the system was created by them and works perfectly. That's the only thing I've ever had with her.
that's a red flag. That's a huge red flag. And it's interesting with that group, the coalition, because it's like we're all living our own personal hell as far as like domestic violence or whatever. And when you don't get the help you need at that moment, I remember making a phone call in the garage, to lawyers and stuff. And it's like when they don't help you in that sense, and where do you go from there if it's not the coalition? Where
I
do you
called
go?
the hotlines. I got like breathing techniques, right?
Right? Me
I
too.
didn't get, I needed legal advice. I needed to know, because even though I had been in office for 6 years at that point,
Yeah.
um, I was bewildered as to how this was all like affecting me legally and what I should be doing, who I should be talking to, what kind of protections do I need to enact on
Mm-hmm.
myself. And I got really nothing,
Mm-hmm.
nothing at all. And I was so mad that after calling the hotline a couple of times and not getting any assistance, I randomly ran into in my cafe that I frequent, ran into the one of the 13 or 12 member organizations were tabling.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, hey, I called and y'all didn't help me. And I'm kind of mad about that. And they're like, oh, call again. And they gave me another number and another person. And I ended up not getting really any help at all. And when I found out, because in my situation, the doctor that I went to after the assault denied me a rape kit, denied me the ability to get evidence collected because I had successfully escaped my attempted rapist. And but I was drugged and I was assaulted, but I escaped being penetrated. And because I escaped being penetrated, my male doctor thought, well, you don't deserve a rape kit. Turns out he was wrong. We have the Survivor's Bill of Rights that says that we do, in fact, have a right to have our evidence collected. And realizing that he had gone astray of this law, of the Survivor's Bill of Rights. So just the situation for any victims out there. This is the situation we have in law. You have a right, if you say that you've been assaulted, you have a right to go to the doctor, the hospital, a cop. You have a right to have a what we call a rape kit, a sexual assault evidence kit. Any element of that kit is accessible to you. You can also decline any element if you don't want to be re-traumatized or it isn't pertinent. You can have that kit collected confidentially pending your decision to press charges in case you're, confused and scared and don't know what you want to do legally. Get that evidence. Get it now. Have it collected. You can make a decision later. You also have a right. I think I went over. Yeah, you have those rights. And we have this in law. We also have in law that the AG's office, the DOJ, has to send out instructions to all the hospitals and all of the law enforcement officers about these rights and how to deal with kids. So you have the right. The doctors are being informed of the right, but there is no law requiring that the doctor knows what those rights are or tells the victim. And so that's where the coalition comes in and apparently seems to want only certain kinds of victims to have access to a kit. Because when I went to the coalition and said, hey, I want to put in a bill to close this link, I was denied. The doctor broke the law. I was denied any information about my right to a kit. And I want to close this link. So you have the rights. The AG's office tells the hospitals the rights, and the doctor doesn't have to know or tell the victim. I just want to say the doctor has to tell the victim the rights. So my bill, a palm card with those rights on it. And if you come into a hospital, say you were assaulted, the doctor says, here you go. Just like the patient bill of rights, just like 12 other things you sign in the hospital. And when I went to the coalition and said, hey, write this bill for me. You're the experts. You're the good guys. Again, still wide-eyed. Still good old Democrat. You guys are great. I love you. Help me. Knowing that I was 4 months out of my own assault, they invalidated me. They told me that they made the system the way it is and it's working perfectly, and they refused. I then went to the Office of Victim Advocate, which operates under the DOJ, and she confirmed over 2 very long conversations that it was a huge problem. So I went back to them and said, write the bill for me. It's a problem. It's not just me. It's a bunch of people. Write the bill. By the DOJ's own estimate, it's 1,000. 1,000 sexual assaults happen in this state, and the victims go to the hospital and are not informed that they have a right to a kit. 1,000. And then the coalition not only doesn't write the bill for me, they show up, they oppose the bill. Again, the only thing the bill does is inform victims of their rights. They show in opposition, 2 lobbyists, by the way, 2 of them. They usually do 2 by 2. Again, that 11,000 is stretching really far. And they say that someone like me, someone like Rep. Reed, who was assaulted, drugged, groped, chased, and physically movements were controlled, but escapes being penetrated. Someone like me should not have a right to have their evidence collected. This is the coalition, the monopoly on helping victims is sitting here using most likely taxpayer dollars to argue against victims knowing what their own rights are. Even while we inform rapists when we arrest them, we inform them that they have a right to a lawyer. And they're arguing that a victim shouldn't have a right to know their rights. So that's what got me started in this. And then because I came after them hard for doing that, because I found it incredibly against everything they get money for, they then started to act against all of my women-related bills. And I found out that they've opposed a lot of victim rights bills over the years. So they opposed my bill they're on video opposing it before it went to the Senate, and they had to support it, allowing domestic violence victims out of their lease so that they can escape their attacker. They oppose allowing domestic violence victims to file a protective order online instead of having to go in person. This organization that said we don't want all victims to have a right to a sexual assault evidence kit, we don't want all of them to have a regular state rape kit, they also lobbied successfully to outlaw over-the-counter kits. So now you don't get a state kit and you can't buy your own kit. Why are we paying them again?
Right.
And this is my point. I want the books open, because why are they lobbying so heavily against victims' rights? And they're probably using taxpayer dollars to do it. Why?
There's a lot of other survivors that are coming forward that went to the Coalition Against Domestic Violence and did not get help. So we're not yelling into a vacuum, you and I, being two people that went to the coalition for help. More people are coming forward and they will be talking.
Good. And I want all of them to be willing to come forward because right now my neck is stuck out there. They're coming after me. They're calling me like they always do when they discredit people. Like I'm sure the first people who came forward about Epstein were discredited and called crazy and conspiracy theorists and just emotional and hysterical, like the people who first came forward about the priest abuse. Like all of it, we're dismissed because first they ignore you and then they make fun of you and then they attack you and then you win. So please, if this is in fact, if this has impacted you, if the coalition has hurt you when they should have been helping you, if you know something about wrongdoing, please be willing to come forward, even if it's just privately to me or someone else you feel safe with, because we can't, our silence is allowing this to happen.
And you're allowed to contact me as well. I'll be happy to have you on the Gracie Gotham podcast as well. Alan, thank you so much. You're so lovely. Thank you
Thank you,
for
Grace.
your time.